Oh, hello there. Welcome back to my channel. So in this video I will talk about this guy here, the Bastl Kastle 2 FX Wizard. A really cool little multi-effect device by Bastl Instruments. It's small, it can be powered via battery, so it's highly portable. It's very much patchable as well. It's a lot of fun. In this video I give a tour of the device, its physical features, the UI, and then I demonstrate the effects. If you just purchase the device and are trying to find your way around it, or if you're considering maybe purchasing it, this video can help you get a better sense of what it is, what you can do. Alright, so enjoy. Okay. So here it is. This is the Bastl Kastle 2 FX Wizard. So you have stereo input, stereo output with mini jacks. You have power via USB-C, and then you have two sync input and output, and these are stereo, so you can actually route two signals inside and route two signals from the device. So you can power through USB, you can also power through three AAA batteries, and I think they can last up to 15 hours. Okay, and the audio out can also work as a headphone output. Alright, so other than that, let's look at the UI, the layout. So we have 7 knobs. You have 3 on the left, 3 on the right, and 1 in the center here. We have 2 buttons, and then you have a bunch of these little patch points. Generally, when they are circled in white, it means they are modulation sources, and when they're not circled in white, it means they're modulation targets. And the arrows tell us what each of them modulates. Alright, so let's look at the knobs first. You have 3 knobs that have the little white rabbit symbol, right? This one in the middle and these 2. So these are the knobs that deal with the effect parameter, and their role will vary depending on the effect. But generally this one amount corresponds to the amount of effect applied. Again, there are some minor variations depending on the effect. We have a time knob that affect like time parameters. So for delay it's straightforward, it's time, and for other effects it might have different functions. And then we have a feedback, which I think is the same for every effect. It just sends back the signal into the effect, so creating a feedback loop, and can be quite intense if you push it. Then we have here the LFO, so that's a modulation source, and you actually have access to triangle and pulse wave shape, and I think there are ways to eke out some other wave shapes, but that's a little more advanced. So for the LFO knob, when you turn, the knob controls the rate of the LFO. If you have it at noon, the LFO is not moving, and then if you turn it counterclockwise, it gets faster and faster in sync with the tempo. And then if you turn it clockwise, it gets faster and faster, but it's free, so not linked to the tempo. Then we have these 3 knobs on the left. So these are attenuators for the modulation. So you can attenuate the signal and you can also invert it. So for all these 3 knobs, it's the same thing. When you are in the middle at noon, you don't have any signal, nothing goes through. Then as you turn clockwise, you send in more and more of the modulation signal, right, of the input signal. And if you turn counterclockwise, you send in more and more of the signal, but it's inverted, right? These knobs to the left correspond to the knob on the right. So this is modulation for the time knob, this is modulation for the feedback knob, this is modulation for the LFO parameter, right? So time, feedback, LFO. We also have secondary function like input, output, stereo, filter, rhythm, and timing, and tempo, sorry. So you access these by pressing the shift button. So if I press the shift button and I turn this knob, I will get the input gain. So basically these two deal with the gain staging. So you have, you can control here the input gain, so the gain of the signal coming in, and the output gain, the gain of the signal coming out. Okay. Here you have a stereo control where you can detune the left and the right side relative to each other to create an effect of like widen the signal. So when you're counterclockwise, you have the original signal, and as you turn clockwise, you get more detuning and therefore more stereo, and that works for both mono input or stereo input. Then you have a filter with this knob here, again with the secondary function. So if you press shift, so here if you're at noon you have nothing. If you turn counterclockwise, you get a low pass filter, right? So you can, here it will be all the way closed and you can open it this way. And clockwise you have a high pass filter, right? So here it's all the way closed and you can open it, turn it more towards noon. So kind of like a DJ, filter, pretty handy. And that the filter applies both to the effect and to the input signal. The secondary function, tempo, rhythm. So tempo, I believe, is a way to set the internal tempo if you're not synchronizing to an external clock. And rhythm, I am not sure. So that leaves us now with the buttons. So the shift button is the way you can access the secondary functions. The FX mode is a button that will switch between all the different effects. All right, so now in terms of the patch points here. So again, the basic principle is that when it's in a white enclosure, it's a modulation source, and when it's not, it's a modulation destination. And for the destinations, you have an arrow that tells you where the modulation applies. Okay, so for example, the LFO is here, and you have at the top you have 3 output for the triangle LFO, and at the bottom 3 output for the pulse LFO. You have modulation sources, you have this pattern generator. So these are the 3 ones that are at the bottom, I think, are the modulation sources. The G will give you gates, the C gives you CV, and the R is used to reset. So if you want to change the pattern, to reset the pattern. The pattern generator, I won't get into too much detail, but basically every time you turn it on, it creates a random pattern, a 16-step pattern that repeats, and there are ways to change it, there are ways to have it vary, there are ways to have it shorter, to have it 8 steps instead of 16 steps. So you can do a lot of things with this pattern. Then the envelope and ENV is the envelope generator, the envelope follower, sorry. So it basically follows the signal, the gain of the signal, and creates a modulation source that results from that. CV at the bottom, I'm not sure. Yeah, and so these are the modulation sources, and you can send them to so here you have 6 patching points. I think the bottom 3 affect the LFO modulation. The top 3 affect the feedback modulation, and you can just follow the arrows to see that. And then these 6 patch points affect, all of them affect the time mode, the time modulation. But they're a little different. The top ones are free, and the bottom ones are sample and hold. They follow the clock. They give you a different value for each click of the clock. All right. What else? So the trig here, it affects the amount. So the effect will be slightly different depending on which effect you're dealing with, because remember, these three knobs affect different parameters, work slightly differently depending on the effect. And then the effects mode will change the effect, so alternate between different effects, which is pretty cool. For audio input output, you have access to the audio input left and right. On the left, 2 patching points. On the right, 2 patching points, you have the access to the output. And the 2 middle ones are ground. So if you connect several devices, you can ground them here. This one, the sync, so you have access to what comes in, right, on the left, on the right. And left-right just mean basically you have access to 2 signals, so you can have a clock and another CV, or 2 different CV signals or whatever. And out, same thing, you can get 2 signals out, one on the left, one on the right. In the middle, the plus and minus, these are things that can affect the pattern generator, make it shorter, or make it more varied, or make it completely random. Yeah, so that's again a more advanced category. All right, so we have I plugged in a little pocket operator here, and my Kastle 2 is powered via USB. So let me turn it on. Here we go. All right, so let's see. Let's first adjust the input level. So I press Shift and I use this knob here. Okay. Okay, excellent. Okay. Okay, good. All right, so here this is the raw signal. To cycle through the effects, you use the FX mode button, and the color here will tell you which effect you're dealing with. All right, so the first one was green, was the delay. Then we have the flanger, the freezer, the panner, the crusher, the slicer, the pitcher, the replayer, and the shifter. Okay, so we have 9 of them, and it rounds robin, goes back to the delay. All right, so let's go over these kind of, briefly. So the delay first, pretty straightforward. The control, so we have the dry wet here, the delay time, and the feedback. So okay, and the delay time goes from 2 milliseconds to 1.15 seconds. Right, and everything in between. And the feedback, at minimum it just gives you 1 echo, and then at maximum it just keep repeating. It doesn't self-oscillate, so it doesn't go above 1, right? Okay, so let me, okay. Now a good time to maybe demonstrate also the filter. So I press Shift to access the filter, and I engage the low pass filter by turning counterclockwise. Right, and I have a high pass filter if I turn clockwise. Okay. All right. So moving on to the next effect, that's the flanger. So with the flanger, the amount corresponds to the mod depth. So, pretty much the dry wet amount. Modulation rate here with the time parameter, and then The feedback is the global feedback, so it gives us, at the minimum, we get some sort of more like a chorus type effect. Then we get a flanger at noon, and we get a self-oscillating monster when we go all the way. So let me demonstrate a little bit. Here maybe I can illustrate also the use of the stereo thing. So you can press shift, turn this, and you get basically kind of a detune of the left and the right relative to each other that creates this kind of widening effect. Okay, it's pretty cool. Whoa! Okay, all right. Now moving on to the next effect, which is freezer. So freezer, here it's a little different. So when you're counterclockwise with the amount you record, and you listen for the signal, and then as you turn it clockwise, you freeze the signal. So. Right. Okay, and then as you turn more clockwise, this is kind of the dry wet balance. The time gives us, so if it's clockwise, it says the repeat time, right? So I'm sorry, counterclockwise, you get more like rhythmic divisions and go faster, right, as you turn more towards noon. And then on the clockwise side, it's more like a tonal, right? You get more like almost like kind of a wave shaper type. Okay, and then the feedback, basically as you open it, introduces more new audio to the frozen signal. Okay, yeah, so when it's at 0, yeah, okay, so I see. So when you open it, you actually, you actually lose progressively the frozen window, and you record the new incoming signal. So if there is no incoming signal, counterintuitively, when you have more feedback, the sound dies out. Whereas when you're at 0 feedback, it just keeps sounding forever. Whoa. All right. Okay, so that's the freeze. Then we move to the panner. So the panner is, well, a panner. So the amount controls right, the strength of the effect, the amount, modulation rates, and it gets quite fast, it gets to audio rate, so we can have an interesting kind of wave shaping effect here. And it can get pretty slow. Okay, and the feedback, just a global feedback, so it sends back some of the signal. So you can get some interesting, okay, let me change the pattern a little bit. Okay. So that's the panner. Then then we move to the crusher. I guess the crusher can make sound without any input. Okay, so the crusher is a beat crusher, downsampler. So here we control the downsample amount, the sample rate, and the feedback. So you can really completely destroy your sound, or you can have some more subtle kind of glitchy effects. Okay, moving on to the slicer. So the slicer creates, so let's listen to it with so here I have a sustained sound. Let's choose another sound. So I'm not super familiar with this machine, so with this device. Okay, good. Come on. Okay, good. So the slicer, as I open the amount, right, it makes slices that are become like thinner as you turn clockwise. So kind of grain, you can think of it as grain size, right? It's tiny and then bigger grains. The time knob controls the pattern. So you have various rhythmic patterns. Okay, let me slow down the tempo a little bit. Okay. You can tap the tempo by pressing Shift and tapping the tempo on the FX mode button, which is pretty cool. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so here you can hear the different patterns, right? And the panning here is because I use this stereo thing, but I can take that out. All right. Okay. And then I can add randomness to the pattern with the feedback button. So, you know, minor variations up to something that's pretty much completely random. Okay. Then we have the pitcher. Okay, so the amount creates more or less pitch shift. The time button sets the size of the shifting window, so it can be seen as modulation speed or grain size. So I'm reading here from the manual, but basically if you're counterclockwise, you'll get a more rhythmic a slower, more rhythmic effect, and if you're clockwise all the way, you get faster and more tonal. So let's try to yeah, I'm not sure I fully understand what they mean by rhythmical, but interesting. Okay, let's try that on the pattern. Okay. So the next one is the replayer. So it's a tape looper emulation. Okay, so I can erase, I can freeze, and I can record. The time parameter controls the speed. It can be forward or reverse, right? And then the feedback controls the feedback, but only for the incoming signal, not the output. Okay. Okay, and finally we have the shifter. So it's a different approach to pitch shifting. So dry wet. Then I can pitch down, up. So at noon, I believe at noon I'm on the original time, and then slowing down, and then, well, pitching down, pitching up. pitch changes, but the tempo stays constant. Okay, and the feedback. Whoa. Okay, interesting. All right. Okay, that's it. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you later. Bye.